Is 2022's M3GAN just another killer doll movie, or is there more to it? Let's talk about it on today's review. Non-spoiler going into M3GAN, a story written by James Wan, produced by Jason Blum, or at least Blumhouse Entertainment, directed by Gerard Johnstone. And yes, it is a killer doll, except, well, I guess you could say it is the girl version of Child's Play, because this film certainly does borrow from it. Now, Child's Play is not anywhere near being the first sort of killer doll type of story. There's been tons of them throughout history, Puppet Master, of course, being famous. But really what M3GAN leans on as far as inspiration, besides other killer doll movies, and there's a lot of Terminator 3 in this film, because she does kind of become the Terminatrix at one point, it seems, or at least a much lesser version of that. It really leans on something from the past. Have any of y'all ever watched the old science fiction horror show The Outer Limits? It was kind of like The Twilight Zone, except that Outer Limits focused a lot more on sci-fi horror, whereas Twilight Zone was a bit more psychological at times, even though Outer Limits did tend to be like that too. This movie borrows a lot from The Outer Limits, specifically the 1990s Outer Limits episodes Valerie 23 and its subsequent sequels, because the plot is lifted almost identically from there, except, of course, it's done a bit different. So if you take The Outer Limits and you combine it with Child's Play, that's pretty much what you get here out of this movie. So Allison Williams, best known for her performances on HBO's Girls, stars as Gemma, an inventor working for a toy company who's trying to revolutionize the market by having an uber-realistic robot/cyborg companion, top secret of course, for her newly orphaned niece, played by Violet McGraw, who was in, I guess most notably, Ready Player One and a few other TV shows, and she plays the niece, who's obviously dealing with a huge loss with what happens with her parents, but finds the companionship and the comfort from M3GAN. But the problem was M3GAN's programming a bit too perfect. That's what the story here is about. So let's be real. As somebody who has watched a lot of these killer doll movies and a lot of these films where there's artificial intelligence that eventually becomes too smart, turning on its human creators and causing a major problem, I can tell you that this movie is more of that. It doesn't really try to reinvent the wheel. It really doesn't. If you've seen one of these films, you've seen them all. And to be brutally honest with you, it just comes down to how much experience you have watching these kinds of movies. I haven't seen like every horror movie to ever come out. I certainly didn't see every horror movie to come out in 2022, but I've seen a lot of these throughout my lifetime, and they really try nothing new here. And as a result of that, if you've seen a lot of these killer doll movies or these haunted dolls or, artificial intelligence stuff like Terminator or Matrix, you've already seen this plot told over and over again. I was able to predict every kill before it happened. I was able to predict the outcome of the film before it happened. I mean, hell, at the end of the first act, I successfully predicted the character arc at the end of the film with the two leads. I just knew what was going to happen, and it happened, and there was no surprises whatsoever. There was nothing really that I thought was in any way creative. It's just kind of a run-of-the-mill story that's been done before. However, that's, I think, the biggest weakness of the film, is that it really doesn't try anything new. But what it does do very well is crafting the special makeup effects and optical effects used to create M3GAN. So M3GAN was played by Amy Donald in the film, but director Gerard Johnstone does utilize a lot of different filmmaking techniques, optical effects, makeup effects, camera works. He definitely is using different tricks to give M3GAN that creepy vibe, and that's definitely one thing that this movie does very well, and that is that M3GAN is without question creepy. I mean, the character, her lack of a soul, like, it really came off like the production of this movie was really tailored to making M3GAN as terrifying as possible, to the point where there are parts in this movie that are pretty gory. There are some scenes that are almost in some ways ridiculous to where you can't help but laugh. Like, there's some stupid stuff in this movie, y'all. There's some real dumb stuff. But once you kind of accept that this is not supposed to be a serious horror film, it's really that to me is something that I want to talk about. Is it really does kind of blur the line, because there are parts of it that are definitely meant to be scary and terrifying, and it definitely has that sort of B-movie appeal, but there's a whole other side to the movie where it just tries to be funny, and it kind of is self-aware. The movie kind of has an identity problem in that. There were some things that I thought were just so over the top that I laughed. I mean, I literally laughed at how ridiculous they were. Even the simplest things. But then there were some moments that were actually meant to be scary. And while I wasn't scared watching it, it's very hard to scare me with a horror movie nowadays. It's very difficult. M3GAN definitely, the character of M3GAN, without question, is the film's biggest strength. I would even go so far as to say that I wouldn't even bring like any kids to this film. And I'm somebody who, I watched all kinds of horror movies when I was a kid, but I know it can be kind of strong imagery because it does tend to get gory at times, and there is some unsettling things that happen. But it is relatively tame, though, in comparison to some of these other slasher types of movies. Overall, I did enjoy watching it, but it's not really a movie that I feel is one that I'm gonna go out and rush out to get the 4K of, when it comes out. It's really not a must-see film. I mean, there's already a killer doll film in the James Wan, I guess, library of movies, and that would be Annabelle. Even though Annabelle was not directly created by him, it's based on the Annabelle doll that is a real doll. It's a real doll that, exists. It's still another killer doll movie. So they try to make this movie a bit more relevant by giving us some commentary. The film really does give you the message of, are we going too far with our technology? Where will artificial intelligence take us? And is our attachment to technology, is our addiction and attachment to technology making us less human? Are our bonds with other humans decreasing? That's the way I felt walking out of the movie theater. But I must say, and this is the unfortunate truth, is that other films have done this, not just overall, but in the horror genre, and done it better. I feel like this was a fun movie, a fun romp, but it's not one that I feel like I need to go revisit, and it's not one that I can sit here and say, oh yeah, you need to go see it today. I think you'll enjoy it if you go see it. I think if you know what to expect, if you know that it's basically a combination of Annabelle and Chucky mixed with a little bit of, Terminator 3, I think you'll dig some of it, but ultimately it's not really a film that, it can be skipped and you really won't be missing much, because there are better movies that do the same thing. Those are my thoughts on M3GAN. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you are new, and take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.